Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at our final instalment of the three-part series English and Maths in the Real World. So what we've been focused on so far is this idea about the cost of living crisis. We've had a look at some of the key elements regarding English, some of the key elements with Maths, and now we're going to think about bringing it all together to have a go at a writing question for English. Now if you haven't done so already, please could you like and subscribe, it really does help us out when you do so. So with the final instalment of these lessons, you'll be able to recall how to write a leaflet, understand how to apply maths and English to everyday life, and apply your understanding to an exam style question. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. So the question that we're thinking about now is the same one that we looked at in the last two videos, and this is going to look at how to actually apply our understanding, the things that we've learned in the last videos, to this actual question. So it says then, you've been asked to write a leaflet aimed at families advising them on how to deal with the cost of living crisis. In your response, you should write in the form of a leaflet, use the appropriate tone for the question, and the final thing will be to use a range of DeForest techniques. Now, hopefully by now you already are fairly secure in your knowledge of DeForest techniques. If not, don't worry about it too much because we do go over those in many of our other videos as well. Now, whenever you face a question like this, it's important to think about the TAP of the exam question. Now, specifically what we mean when we're focusing on the TAP is the topic, the audience, and the purpose. Now, this is going to help us to narrow down what the question is actually about, who we need to actually talk to, or who we're aiming this writing towards, and then the purpose. And the purpose is going to be you're either there to inform, advise, or persuade someone to come round to your point of view. So for the first thing then, if we think about the topic, just help narrow down on what specifically we're going to write about, it's going to be about the cost of living crisis. Now if you're not too familiar with this, then please do check out our previous video that did go through not only a reading assessment but also some really important information about this current event that's going on in people's lives. Now that we've done that, we need to think about the audience. So if you have a look here, it actually says it's aimed at families. So therefore, it's people who care and need to actually provide for their family. The next thing is the purpose. So why have we been asked to actually put pen to paper? And the whole purpose of it is to give them advice. Now this is going to be particularly important, especially when we think about the super challenge that's on the screen now, which is what kind of mood or tone should your writing have? So if you are giving someone advice, you need to remember that the tone needs to be gentle. It needs to show that you come from a place of understanding, and you don't want to scold them or tell them off for having things like takeaways or holidays abroad, for example. It's about reassuring them, acknowledging their side of the argument, and then providing them with a better option to think about. The mega challenge then, the last thing to think about, will be to recall the organisational features or the presentational features needed for a leaflet. This is going to be extremely important because it's an easy way to lose marks if you do not remember how to lay out a leaflet, and we're going to go through that now in a bit more detail. What is a leaflet, and what are some of the key presentational or organisational features that we need to know? So first of all then, a leaflet is a document which is compiled with information on one specific topic. The main aim of a leaflet is to inform the readers. So a lot of the time it's not going to be as persuasive or even as aggressive as a lot of other forms of writing. It's purely going to be there to provide you with information. Now when you're creating your own leaflet, the things we need to include to make sure we're actually getting the right marks and actually organising it the way that you're supposed to organise a leaflet are these kind of features. So the first thing to think about would be, have you used a title, headings and subheadings, questions and answers. So these are really kind of key ones to do. What you do is you use a rhetorical question. So let's say if it was an information about a takeaway, for example, you might say, are you feeling the midweek blues? We have the solution for you. So you kind of give them the question and then you provide them with the answer. So again, if it was like a takeaway menu, the answer would be to solve all your problems by having one of their takeaways during the week. The next thing to think about would be using bullet points. Again, we very rarely actually use these things with other forms of writing, but you would use it for a leaflet. And directly addressing the reader. So when we directly address the reader, it means using personal pronouns such as you, just to draw them in. So before we move on, I want you to think about how might your interaction with a leaflet change in the two different assessments. Okay, so if you think about things like the reading assessment and the writing assessment, would the way that you treat a leaflet differ at all? If you're not too sure about that, please do check out our latest video going through leaflets in more detail, which does give you a bit more of an insight into how to do these in a bit more detail. Look at the student response and attempt the challenges that follow. So the student response is going to be responding to the same question that we looked at a moment ago. So again, it's all about the cost of living crisis. So you can see there straight away, they've actually used a title, which we know was one of the key features to use when you're doing a leaflet. So it says then, the cost of living has caused many families to struggle to live their normal lives. This leaflet will provide real advice to help families to continue to prosper. Planning a budget. So again, we've got a subheading there as well. There are many things to think about when managing your finances. Did you know that 80% of us spend too much on our weekly shop? Want to spend less? The solution is simple. Shop around for the best deals, cut down on the weekly treats, and stop being greedy and having so many takeaways. So this is a real response that a student has wrote. What I'd like you to think about is just going through these challenges regarding the response that we've just read. Okay, so the first thing to think about would be to read through the response and identify any of the features that would consider a leaflet. The super challenge would be identify any positive or negative aspects about the response. And finally, is this response successful? And if you think it is, try and actually identify a quotation that would help you to justify the answer. Now, if you want to spend a bit more time on this, please feel free to pause the video. We're now going to jump ahead, have a little bit of feedback, and see what the actual examiner has said. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the teacher's comments. So here on the left hand side we have the same response that we've just read through, and this is a response given by the teacher when it was assessed. So the first thing we're going to focus on is what went well. It's important to acknowledge that when you do have a go at a writing task, even if you're not massively confident, it's important to actually focus on the things that do work well as the things that you need to develop. So first of all, one of the things that works well is that the response has used some of the features that you require for a leaflet. So it has used a heading and it's also used a subheading as well. The response has started to use an appropriate tone to suit the purpose of the writing. When we're talking about the tone, we're talking about how you're actually going to give that advice. And as we said earlier, if you're advising someone, you want to make sure you're calm, complimentary at times, but also make sure that you're not too aggressive. And actually this feedback is giving us a little bit of an indication here about something that maybe isn't going to get them so many marks. And it says that they've started to use the appropriate tone. And this implies that the writer, although making a good attempt potentially, has not carried on this tone that is appropriate for a leaflet. There are some examples of defiance techniques. Think about the actual language the examiner is using as well. Some, just like the previous comment, would imply that even though they've done some positive things, there are also some things that they need to work on. So we can see there, if you look at the second paragraph, that we have a percentage and also a rhetorical question. So did you know that 80% of us spend too much on our weekly shop? So straight away, this is actually a really good technique to use. Not only have they used a statistic, but they've also used a rhetorical question in the same device or in the same sentence. So it's a good thing to think about and take away when you come and actually approach this question yourself. EBI, so things that need to be improved then. The response has many spag errors. So hopefully you're able to pick up on them there. And sometimes it's not that easy to pick up on because a lot of the time what we do is we gloss over these things and it is really hard to actually understand where the errors actually are. And if we go through the second paragraph again, you can see we've got elements here that need to be changed. So for the EBI, even though I've used yellow there clearly for the EBI, I'm just going to highlight some things in blue to show the kind of grammatical errors that we need to be addressing. So you have words like to, which again you have 3 different forms of this word, each meaning something slightly different. You've got you are instead of your. And then we've got some other things to go into as well. So spend a minute, just make sure you've got all the different spelling and grammatical errors that are there on the actual example. And now we're going to think about the other thing that needs to improve. Now this is the biggest thing for me really. The tone begins to sound too negative and almost actually like they're accusing the person of something. They're calling the person greedy and having too many takeaways. So when we're giving advice, we try not to make any judgment. You try to just state the facts, especially if the purpose is to inform someone. So we don't want to get too aggressive or too rude in the tone that we're using. Now, if you want to use this response to have a go at the question yourself, please feel free to do so. Remember to check out those other 2 videos that go into it in more detail. For example, if you think about the second video we went through, you could use some of the details about the maths, the actual financial aspect there, and for video 1, some of the actual information within the reading assessment to help apply to your writing 1 as well. Remember, it's really important that when we're studying English, we also acknowledge that maths is a real important part of learning as well. So it's important to try and think of maths and English as something that should work together and be used simultaneously in any form of assessments if possible. If you need any additional support, the new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. Thanks ever so much for listening, guys. If you haven't done so already, please can you like and subscribe. It really helps us out when you do so. Thank you. Bye bye.